The year 1988, and I'm in the back of my dad's truck. There's a newspaper, and I always loved to look at the entertainment section of the LA Times. I loved to see the full page black and white movie posters. I collected them for a long time. I had a big box of every movie poster. Like when the movie would first come out, there'd be the full page ad, and an ad was in the paper. I remember clearly it was right across from the ad for A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which I thought was really cool looking. Um, the ad was for a movie called uh, The Last Temptation of Christ. And I felt guilty saying the title because from what I had heard about the movie, the little bits that I had read in the paper and stuff, I remember saying to my cousin, "This is the bad Jesus movie." That's how I described it, the bad Jesus movie. Well, I have the bad Jesus movie right here, um, which I have been watching tonight and wanted to talk about because, as anybody who saw my top 100 favorite movies knows, The Last Temptation of Christ, the bad Jesus movie, is one of my favorite movies of all time now. I saw it years later. I wanted to judge it for myself. And what I saw as a young, 15-year-old altar boy, I didn't understand what all the fuss was about watching it. Um, all the controversy that had accompanied the movie over the years, I didn't understand it. Last Temptation of Christ is a telling of the life of Christ. However, it's not the traditional telling. Um, when we first encounter Jesus, he is basically he has these crippling headaches, uh, visions. Uh, he knows God is trying to talk to him, and he is rejecting God. And he will do whatever it takes to reject God. And one of the things that he does, he makes crosses for the Romans. Jesus was a carpenter, after all. Jesus is not the hero in the beginning. Jesus is this creepy little whining, wishy-washy kind of guy. He drove Mary Magdalene into prostitution by not marrying her. Best friend Judas sees him as this weakling and a traitor to their people. He is not the hero, but he knows that there's something he's supposed to do. And he goes out into the world to find it. And of course, we all know where that leads. In the movie and in the book, divinity is not a given with Jesus. The idea that Kazanakis and that Scorsese had that fascinated them, that fascinated me when I read the book, when I watched the movie, was the duality of Christ. This person who is all man, he is a living human being with biology no different than any of us, and he's also all God. He is both. And what would that be like? Because those are two completely contrasting things. One is being uh, all spiritual and ethereal and non-corporeal, and the other is being us. And what is that? How do you exist? It would be, I would think, maddening. And yet at the same time, also once you're in it, once you've gotten used to living, that moment of deciding I'm going to sacrifice myself, I'm going to be crucified, would be terrifying. And it would have to be, because if it wasn't, then there's no sacrifice. It has to be something that Jesus doesn't want to do. He has to want to stay here. He has to want to have a wife, have children. If he doesn't want those things, then there's no sacrifice whatsoever. He's just going through the motions. It's God came down, made himself a body, and went, all right, I got 33 years to kill. Let's just do this thing, all right? Um, and it couldn't be that. There had to be sacrifice. So, as the movie goes along, it gets a little bit more into the rhythm of telling more traditional biblical stories, water to wine, uh, um, curing the blind, raising Lazarus, all those things. We see that. Through the eyes, though, of this Jesus who is still struggling. He's not sure what he's supposed to be doing. It changes constantly. It's this evolving idea of what he is supposed to do, who he is supposed to be. And it's fascinating and it's beautiful and it's wonderful to watch. Um, and of course, it ends. Well, it doesn't end with the crucifixion. It leads to the crucifixion. He's up on the cross. Father, why have you forsaken me? And I'm going to get into major, major spoiler territories. Anybody who hasn't seen the movie, just turn this off, watch the movie, come back. Because really, it's the surprise of what happens in this that makes it so wonderful. Um, as he's on the cross, a little girl appears to him, and she says, "I'm your guardian angel, and I'm here to take you off of that cross. You don't have to suffer anymore. God doesn't want you to suffer anymore. You're not the Messiah." And Jesus is sort of like, "Oh, great. That is awesome." And he comes off the cross, and he then goes about leading a human life. He marries Mary Magdalene. She dies. He goes and he hooks up with Mary and Martha, both. Uh, has kids, lives his life, grows old. And at the end of the movie, as Jerusalem is falling, um, Judas comes to him and says, "What are you doing here?" It was Harvey Keitel. That's one of the things about the movie that's funny is Harvey Keitel's Brooklyn accent throughout the playing Judas. What are you doing here? Um, and why are you here? You're not supposed to be here. You're not. You were supposed to die. That was what your job was. And Jesus says, "No, no, no, it's all right. It's all right. My guardian angel said I could do this." And Judas is like, "Your guardian angel? That's what you think she is? Take another look. Satan." And Jesus has been tricked. He didn't die on the cross, and thus everything falls apart. And this dying old man, this dying Jesus, climbs up to the top of a mountain. And he just, he's talking to God. He's like, "Take me back. Take me back. I'm ready. I can do this. I want to die on the cross. I want to bring salvation." And he blinks his eyes and he's back up on the cross. And you realize that everything that happened, that like 30 or 40 years of living as a normal, ordinary man, happened in the blink of an eye. And that's the last temptation. The temptation to be one of us, the temptation to forego the pain and the suffering of the sacrifice and to be one of us. And as a 15-year-old Catholic boy, I found that I identified with The Last Temptation of Christ far more than I did with the other religious movies. You grow up with like movies like Jesus of Nazareth, which was a big thing in my, back when I was a kid, they played it every Easter, and my mom would make me watch it. And you couldn't connect with it because Jesus was sort of like back here, and he was sort of like he was Jesus. He was God. He was perfect, and you couldn't connect. You couldn't identify. Um, Now, of course, conservatives in this country didn't want a Jesus that they could connect with and identify. They wanted the Jesus they were used to. So when Last Temptation of Christ came out in '88, first of all, it was supposed to come out in '83, and the Christians killed it with a letter writing campaign where they said, look, we are going to haunt your fucking dreams, Universal Pictures. If you make this movie, we will picket. We will do anything we have to completely destroy you. And they panicked and they pulled the plug. Um, but Scorsese was like, no, no, I'm making this movie. This is the movie I want to make. I'm making this movie. So he cut the budget down to the bone. You know, he it was originally supposed to be like Aidan Quinn was supposed to be Jesus, and you know, he couldn't get Aidan Quinn back, so he got Willem Dafoe to be Jesus, um, and made the movie for like $6 million, and it is so gritty and real and a movie where you feel kind of dirty as you're watching it because you could it's like you could smell it. It's so raw and probably very authentic to the time period in a lot of ways, which I think a lot of those other Jesus movies are not, because they forget. Oh yeah, there's like Jewish customs that would have happened and different, you know, very primitive things. These are people that lived in the desert, you know, in the year zero. There would have been a lot of very primitive stuff happening, and you know, I think that, you know, when it's I'm no longer Catholic. I'm no longer Christian. It's just one of those things that at some point in my life, you know, I said before, it's sort of like Santa Claus. I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody who is a Christian, but that's what it's most like to me. I believed in Santa because my mom and dad told me to, and then you get to a point and you go, oh, okay, that's that's not real. And it's a very similar thing with Christianity, with Christ. I still love the story of Jesus as I love the story of Buddha. Um, as I love the story of Kal-El, by the way, as I love the story of Luke Skywalker. I feel like it is the same sort of a religious kind of journey. You know, that character that can save you. You know, that is bigger than you, that is more powerful, that is all powerful. It's a something that I gravitate towards. I do. Uh, I like those stories. Doesn't mean I believe in them. If I'm burning in hell alongside Martin Scorsese, because he made this movie, you know what? It's not a bad place to be. Because The Last Temptation of Christ, I'm recommending it 100% to believers and non-believers alike. This is a beautiful movie. It is a gorgeous movie. It is a spiritual film, even if you're not a spiritual person. I think that you can feel a connection to it in that way. I still feel that connection to it that I did when I was 15, and which shows me that what I was feeling wasn't necessarily this connection to God. It was this connection to this bigger idea of sacrifice and of how frail we are and how weak we are, but how we can be stronger, the divine inside of us. Um, I think that that's something that I still connect with, and and never as much so as when I watched the movie The Last Temptation of Christ. Do not let um, fundamentalist hypocrites deter you from watching a truly great film that is not offensive in the least bit. Um, the thing is, Christian, Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, atheist, agnostic, uh, whatever you are, you have to be able to think for yourself. There has to be that part of your brain that thinks for itself. And if you go through life judging things that you've never seen based solely on what other people tell you, you're going to be missing out on a lot of really valuable, wonderful things. Last Temptation of Christ is one of them.
In their worlds.
Sort of gave myself the challenge of, okay,